It is Wednesday, May 13th, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Dan Miller, and I'm ready to call the blitz on today's freight headlines.
This is Elena Rossi.
I'm Jules Sterling.
And I'm Buck Reynolds. We have a great show for you today.
Look, yesterday was an absolute track meet. We were talking about Project 44's new autopilot AI and Kodiak's financial gymnastics with that pipe financing.
It sort of felt like everyone was holding their breath over that CVSA road check and those global tariff rulings, right?
Oh, for sure. And here's the play for today. It is a packed episode. We've got a major offensive from the DOJ on cargo theft, some heavy-hitting earnings from J.B. Hunt that are signaling a market shift, and, well, it looks like the border's getting a lot tighter for certain carriers.
It's a lot to process, especially with the fuel tax debate heating up.
Look, it's a heavy-duty news day. Bottom line, let's get into the weeds.
Let's start with some actually good news for once. J.B. Hunt reported their Q1 results yesterday and, well, they actually beat the street's forecast, right? EPS came in at $1.49, which was a few cents over what people expected.
See? That's what I'm talking about. Look, J.B. Hunt is like the seasoned quarterback who knows exactly when to check down to a safe pass. 5% revenue growth in this climate? That's a massive win.
I suppose so, but if I may, Dan, let's look at the margins. Knight-Swift missed their estimates by a pretty wide margin because of an adverse claim in their LTL segment. $45 million just gone because of one legal battle.
Here's the deal, Elena. Those nuclear verdicts we talked about last month are starting to show up on the balance sheets for real now. Knight-Swift CEO Adam Miller is still sounding optimistic, though. Says he sees more reasons for hope now than in the last 4 years.
Exactly. It's a supply-driven recovery, right? Capacity is finally, it's bleeding out. Carriers are folding, the weak players are hitting the showers, and that's finally given the big dogs like Schneider and J.B. Hunt some room to breathe on rates. Bottom line, the long bottom of this recession might actually be in the rearview mirror.
Shelley Simpson over at J.B. Hunt mentioned that intermodal volumes hit record weekly highs in March. That sort of suggests that shippers are moving back toward rail to save on that fuel volatility we've been seeing, right?
Well, they'd better find a way to save, because the political fix for fuel doesn't look like it's going to fly with the folks actually pulling the trailers.
Buck, you're talking about this federal gas tax suspension, right? The president's big 2026 energy relief plan?
I mean, it's a political sugar high, Dan. Plain and simple. The White House wants to pause the 18-cent gas tax and the 24-cent diesel tax until the election. But the ATA and the Truckload Carriers Association came out yesterday and they absolutely shredded the idea.
Really? I mean, you'd think the trucking groups would love lower prices at the pump, sort of?
Actually, Jules, you see, if you kill the tax, you kill the Highway Trust Fund. And without that fund, the bridges don't get fixed, the potholes stay open, and suddenly my risk premiums for equipment damage go through the roof.
That's the nail on the head, Elena. I mean, 24 cents a gallon is a drop in the bucket when diesel has spiked $1.50 since the Iran conflict started in February. It doesn't solve the problem. It just starves the infrastructure. The ATA called it a short-sighted maneuver that threatens our national shop floor.
Look, it's like trying to win a game by trading your star offensive lineman for a flashy wide receiver. You might look good for one play, but eventually your quarterback is going to get sacked because the line, the roads, are falling apart. Bottom line, it's a bad trade.
Speaking of fast moves, Amazon Now is officially going national. They announced yesterday that the 30-minute delivery service is expanding to dozens of cities. Atlanta, Dallas, Seattle.
They're building these tiny 5,000 square foot dark stores right in the middle of downtown areas.
30 minutes? Look, that's not even enough time to get a pizza delivered in most places. How are they pulling that off?
It's the micro-fulfillment strategy. They stock about 90,000 of the most ordered items, electronics, groceries, household stuff, right where the people are. And they're using the Flex Brigade. You know, the gig workers in their own cars?
And that is exactly where my alarm bells start ringing. You see, when you move that fast with an on-demand workforce that doesn't have the same vetting as a CDL driver, the liability is, well, it's astronomical.
It's a mess. I mean, you've got thousands of people in Kias trying to beat a 30-minute clock to deliver a pack of batteries. Well, that's a recipe for a fender bender, or worse. I'm with Elena. Give me a professional driver with a logbook any day.
But from a consumer side, I mean, my retail clients are terrified, Dan. If Amazon sets the standard at 30 minutes, how is a mid-tier carrier supposed to compete? Even the USPS is struggling to keep up, even though their ground advantage is seeing double-digit growth.
It's a race to the bottom on safety for a race to the top on speed. And, I suppose someone has to pay the bill when those Kias start hitting things. Speaking of paying the bill, before we move on to the rest of the docket, we need to take a second to recognize who makes this show possible.
Absolutely. Look, strategic logistics is a game of inches, and it requires world-class engineering. This show is actually powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media.
He's really the architect behind the code that keeps us on the air. And if you value this kind of daily briefing, you should really support the work he's doing, right?
You can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Neural Network Media for a free trial. You'll get access to our daily briefing PDF, which is, actually quite a lifesaver when you're preparing for a board meeting or a driver safety briefing.
Go check it out. Eric's good people. Now, let's get back to the road. Speaking of the road, have you guys seen the 2026 State of Sustainable Fleets report? It just dropped at the ACT Expo in Vegas. And the numbers on natural gas are, they're eye-opening.
Is this about that Cummins X15N engine? I've been hearing a lot of locker room talk about that one lately.
It is. I mean, for the first time, fleets are saying they're getting diesel-like performance out of a gas engine. 71% of operators are seeing clear cost savings. FedEx Freight and J.B. Hunt are both doubling down on it for their heavy-duty cycles.
My thing is the technology-neutral resilience the report mentions. You see, we spent years acting like everything was going to be battery electric by tomorrow. But now, carriers are diversifying. They're using RNG, advanced diesel, and electric where it actually fits. It's much more professional than just chasing a trend.
And it's a ready-now solution. You don't have to wait for a charging grid that might not be built until 2030. But, Buck, are these trucks actually holding their value?
Well, 38% of the guys already using natural gas say they're planning to buy more. So the market is definitely there. I mean, I'm an old diesel head, but even I can smell the difference between a failing wheel bearing and, well, the clean burn on these new RNG units. It's impressive.
Now it's time for Iron Lady's Verdict, our Wednesday segment where we perform a forensic analysis on the legal and regulatory failures that are reshaping our industry's risk profile.
Oh boy, get the gavel out. I can hear the server hum getting louder. Go ahead, Elena.
Yesterday, the Department of Justice unsealed an 18-count criminal indictment against Synergy Marine and their technical superintendent. This is Operation Last Twilight, the federal response to the Baltimore Bridge collapse, and it is a bombshell for every fleet manager listening.
Criminal charges? Not just civil liability?
Precisely. We aren't just talking about insurance payouts anymore. The charges include seaman's manslaughter for the 6 deaths And, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. You see, the NTSB found that the ship's operators were using a flushing pump to supply fuel to the generators, a pump intended only for maintenance. It didn't have the automatic restart functions required by law.
They were running a container ship on a maintenance pump? I mean, that's like trying to run a fleet on a 5-gallon jerry can because you didn't want to fix the fuel line.
It was calculated corner cutting to maintain schedule, Buck. The indictment alleges they even falsified inspection records to hide it. The Iron Lady's verdict here is simple. We have entered an era where operational negligence is being prosecuted as a felony. If you are bypassing safety protocols to keep your equipment moving, the DOJ is no longer looking at your company's checkbook. They are looking at your superintendent's jail cell.
That's a total game changer. Look, it's the difference between a yellow card and a lifetime ban from the league. Bottom line, sorry it was an accident. It doesn't work when there's a paper trail of neglect.
That's Iron Lady's verdict for this week. Let the record show that compliance isn't a suggestion. It's your only defense.
While we're on the subject of the DOJ, look, they just dropped a second hammer yesterday. They released an implementation letter for a war on fraud. We are talking about a massive crackdown on cargo theft.
It's about time. I mean, I've seen reports that strategic theft, the digital identity fraud and double brokering, it's up 1,500% since 2022?
Exactly. The DOJ is finally treating it like organized crime instead of just a local property issue. They're setting up regional task forces modeled after the National Fraud Enforcement Division. They're going to have special prosecutors dedicated specifically to supply chain fraud.
I'll believe it when I see some handcuffs on the people stealing my driver's identities. I mean, these guys are sitting in apartments overseas, double brokering loads and disappearing with the money. It's shadow logistics, and it's killing the small guys.
Actually, Buck, the DOJ letter specifically mentions using RICO statutes. That's the law they use for the mob. It allows them to go after the whole organization, not just the guy who shows up to pick up the load. But my thing is the data sharing. Carriers are going to be mandated to share real-time fraud data with the FBI. That's going to be a huge hurdle for some of the more private companies.
Look, if you want to win the championship, you gotta share the film with your teammates. Bottom line, we can't fight this as individual companies anymore. It's the federal government finally stepping onto the field.
And while the DOJ is fighting fraud at home, the president is in Beijing right now with a delegation of tech titans. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, Elon Musk. They're trying to build a board of trade with China.
A board of trade? Look, that sounds like a managed economy play. Like they're just going to dictate how many soybeans and Boeings get bought?
Sort of. It's a managed trade model. The goal is to create a tariff canyon where approved goods get low duties, while everything else stays behind that 10% global tariff wall, which, by the way, an appeals court just put back in place yesterday after a lower court said it was illegal.
This is exactly what I tell my procurement officers. You see, the legal volatility is actually more expensive than the tariffs themselves. Yesterday, the 10% was illegal. Today, the appeals court says, hold on, we're staying that ruling. So the money is still leaving your account. It's total chaos for landed costs.
I mean, it's like trying to drive in a whiteout. You don't know where the road ends and the ditch begins. And speaking of roads, did you see what happened at the border yesterday?
The visa revocations?
Hundreds of Mexican truckers had their B-1 visas revoked on the spot in Arizona and Texas. Yeah, the great cabotage crackdown. Feds caught a driver moving a load from Nogales to Laredo, which is a strictly domestic-to-domestic move. That's a big no-no for foreign drivers.
It's a foreign driver integrity sweep, and it's not just the border. The FMCSA is also cracking down on non-domiciled CDLs. It looks like nearly 200,000 drivers could be sidelined because of credentialing issues.
200,000? Buck, in this market, even with the recession, that's a lot of capacity to lose in 1 week, right?
It's a supply shock, Jules. I mean, we just said J.B. Hunt is seeing things tighten up. You pull 200,000 drivers out of the seat for visa violations? Rates are going to find a floor real fast.
It's like a last-minute substitution in the fourth quarter that changes the whole game. Bottom line, the long bottom of the freight cycle isn't just ending because demand is up. It's ending because the regulators are finally cleaning out the locker room. That's all for today's High Road. Look, if you're a fleet manager, the play today is to watch that DOJ fraud letter very closely. The war on fraud and the Baltimore Bridge indictments show that the government is done being a spectator. They are now a player on the field, and you'd better have your playbook ready.
Peace out.
Goodbye.
Later.
Go kick some tires. We'll talk tomorrow.